This is Bob Tucker, the second day of the State Oklahoma Chamber of Commerce meeting at Fountain Head State Lodge, November the 13th, 1970. The talk that will be following will be made by Dean McGee, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of Kerr-McGee Corporation, Oklahoma City. This will be recorded for the Oklahoma Living Legend Library of Oklahoma Christian College.
For the public service of Oklahoma, and more importantly to us here, he is your newly elected president of the State Chamber of Commerce, J.E.F. Daly. I'm sure Bill and Allie can tell you what that is used for. I'm like you, I'm not sure myself, but it is beautiful, and I do appreciate it extremely. I have, I think, benefited more than anyone else in the State Chamber of Commerce this year. I have grown, I know, by the association and the exposure that I've had with so many wonderful people throughout this state. And I'm the one that really benefited from this experience and the support that I have received from people just such as you have seen here and heard from here today. And let me echo, Bill, my thanks to yours, these wonderful people that have made this conference what it is. It has been indeed a great one. Thank you all. Your programs that went out in advance of some of the, let's say, solidifying of the arrangements for this conference indicated that we would have the governor-elect as our new luncheon speaker. This gentleman that I'm going to introduce to you now, I think would like it to be known that he is not the governor-elect. And if there's anyone in this audience who can tell us who the governor-elect is, it might be interesting to David Hall or Dewey Bartlett. But we're indeed happy and we're indeed fortunate to have this man, and the level of this program has not lost any of its flavor and color by the fact that we have this man. He said, be sure and tell them I'm a substitute. I'm sure after we hear from this man, you'll feel as I do that he is no substitute. Dean A. McGee is the Chairman of the Board of Directors and Chief Executive Officer of Kerr-McGee Corporation of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He was born in Humboldt, Kansas, March the 20th. Dean, I'm going to tell him again, it was 1904. Mr. McGee was graduated from the University of Kansas in 1926 with a Bachelor of Science degree in mining engineering. He joined the company in 1937 as Vice President in charge of production and exploration. In 1942, he became Executive Vice President. In 1954, he became their President. In 1963, he was also elected Chairman of the Board, and since 1967, he has continued as Chairman of the Board of Directors and Chief Executive Officer. Mr. McGee is an officer or director of numerous businesses, professional, scientific, educational, and community organizations. He serves on the Board of Directors of the General Electric Company, the Oklahoma Natural Gas Company, and the Fidelity Bank. Mr. McGee holds memberships in many petroleum industry organizations, including the American Petroleum Institute, of which he is a director, the National Petroleum Council, and the American Association of Petroleum Geologists. He is a fellow of the Association for the Advancement of Science and the Oklahoma Academy of Science. Also, he is a member of the Board of Trustees of the California Institute of Technology, Oklahoma City University, and the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. He is the author of papers on energy, petroleum, geology, and production practices. And I know that you will, as I am eagerly waiting to hear the Kerr-McGee story. Dean McGee.
Thank you, women, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to appear before this audience It is especially pleasing to be asked to discuss here today the Kerr-McGee Corporation. This forum seems appropriate for recounting its birth and growth. For the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce has, since 1927, been a stalwart champion of the free enterprise system. During this time, it has worked to create a business environment in which Oklahoma companies can grow and prosper. My remarks about Kerr-McGee will be made, of course, with considerable pride, but it is also quite evident as I look out over this audience that there are men present from any number of companies, Oklahoma born and bred, who could very appropriately relate their own success story. The company that has become Kerr-McGee Corporation was born in the Oklahoma oil fields at a time when this state ranked third among all the oil producers. Numerous prolific oil fields in the Seminole area had been found, and their development was to be followed by the discovery of the Oklahoma City field, the largest single oil field ever discovered in Oklahoma, and the 10th largest discovered in this country. But it was also a period of troubled times for both the national economy and the petroleum industry. The company's beginning was a humble one. Its co-founder, Robert S. Kerr, was born in a log cabin in Indian Territory, near what is now Ada, Oklahoma, and worked his way through college selling magazines. He then taught school for 2 years, served with the U.S. Army as an artilleryman in Europe, and in order to pass the state bar examination, returned to study law in the office of a local judge. By the mid-1920s, he was a struggling young attorney. It was a time of struggle for others, too. The greater Seminole oil boom was underway in central Oklahoma, but a small contract drilling firm, Dixon Brothers Drilling Company of Ada, was having difficulty keeping its 2-steam rotary drilling rigs busy. The owners asked their field superintendent, James L. Anderson, if he knew anyone who might be able to help obtain drilling work for the company. Anderson suggested his brother-in-law, Robert S. Kerr. Knowing that the oil industry offered a great opportunity, Kerr promptly indicated his interest. Dixon Brothers Drilling Company was reorganized in 1926, with Kerr and Anderson each owning 20% of the business. In 1929, the Dixon brothers decided to retire and offered their controlling interest in the company to Kerr and Anderson, placing an evaluation of $30,000 on their interest. Since Kerr's and Anderson's assets were negligible, the 60% interest was acquired by payment of $5,000 cash and $25,000 in notes. The new company was organized as Anderson Kerr Drilling Company in the year of the stock market crash and the beginning of the Depression. The company, in its infancy, learned to cope with adversity, a lesson that proved invaluable from time to time in the years ahead. In 1929, the company's net assets amounted to $50,000. Jim Anderson and Bob Kerr were a well-balanced team. Anderson had gained almost 20 years of field experience by working in California and on the island of Trinidad, as well as in the Oklahoma oil field. Anderson capably supervised the field work, while Kerr devoted his efforts toward securing drilling contracts. Fortunately for those in the contract drilling business in Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City oil field was discovered in December 1928, just as development activity in the greater Seminole area was beginning to taper off. There was a great demand for drilling tools in the Oklahoma City field, and Anderson and Kerr Drilling Company moved its 2 rigs and office from Ada to Oklahoma City in 1930. About this same time, the company acquired 2 additional steam rigs. As this young drilling company set up for business in the Oklahoma City field, the national economy was worsening, and the oil business in Oklahoma was deteriorating. The development of the Oklahoma City field was rapid in the early 1930s. Production capacity of individual wells was very large, with some wells testing as much as 100,000 barrels a day through casing. This flood of oil, added to the oversupply from the greater Seminole field, had created in Oklahoma an unprecedented accumulation of above-ground oil stocks, depressed prices, and excess capacity. For a short period of time, the price of crude oil dropped to 10 cents a barrel. But out of this demoralization came the first effective conservation law. The oil industry in Oklahoma had attempted voluntary restriction of oil production in the Seminole area in the late 1920s without success. By 1932, with the market flooded with oil from the Oklahoma City and East Texas fields, the situation became so chaotic that the industry accepted the restricting of production to the available market. In Oklahoma, after a hectic beginning, including the use of National Guard troops, the state succeeded in enforcing its conservation laws, and proration of oil production became a reality. During this period of national economic and oil industry chaos, Bob Kerr's confidence in the future and his persuasiveness kept the drilling tools of the Anderson-Kerr Company busy. Also, the scarcity of money and general uncertainty provided the company with the opportunity to further its goal of acquiring oil and gas production by taking payment for drilling services, partly in cash and partly in leased working interest. Anderson-Kerr, in this manner, acquired part ownership in 14 producing wells in the Oklahoma City field. By 1932, the growth of the company's oil and gas holdings indicated the need for a corporate structure that would permit public financing. Subsequently, A&K Petroleum Company was formed and incorporated in Delaware. This same corporate entity later became Kerr-McGee Corporation. The assets of A&K Petroleum Company were the oil properties formerly owned by Anderson-Kerr Drilling Company. However, public financing of a young and relatively unknown drilling company in this period of severe national economic depression, a demoralized oil industry, and an almost total collapse of the securities market was a Herculean task. It may seem that the first 2 public financings of the company in 1935 and 1936 were too small to merit much attention, but without them, the company probably would have developed differently. The first public financing of the company was achieved in 1935 with the sale of 118,000 shares of Class A stock at $5 a share. Convincing Illinois securities officials that the stock of A&K Petroleum Company was worthy of being offered for sale to the residents of Illinois was a difficult job. Kerr's initial efforts to obtain funds through Chicago investment security firms were more frustrating than success. During these early financing attempts, Kerr's headquarters in Chicago was a cheap hotel room, and his principal eating places were a chain of self-service establishments whose best buy was a generous portion of baked meat. His unshakable confidence that A&K Petroleum Company stock would greatly benefit its purchasers finally brought to a successful conclusion the 1935 financing that made possible the development of approximately 20 sections of gas stations in the Moore County, Texas gas field. In the latter part of 1935, Anderson Kerr made what appeared to be a promising shallow oil discovery near Gainesville, Texas, and acquired several leases nearby. Kerr wanted to drill these properties quickly. However, funds from the 1935 financing had been nearly exhausted on the Moore County, Texas gas properties, and a second financing was necessary. Anderson was not eager to undertake the rapid development of Gainesville at the expense of further financing. An agreement between Kerr and Anderson was reached April the 25th, 1936. Anderson relinquished his half interest in the Anderson Kerr Drilling Company, as well as his interest in A&K Petroleum Company. The second public financing of A&K Petroleum Company was completed in 1936. In 1937, the management was reorganized with Robert S. Kerr as president, R.H. Lynn executive vice president, Dean Carroll vice president and general counsel, T.W. Fenham secretary and treasurer, and myself vice president of production geology. The name of the company was subsequently changed to Kerr-Oil Company. A second enterprise, a partnership, Kerr-Lynn and Company, was formed by these five men plus Travis Kerr, a brother of Bob Kerr. Kerr-Lynn and Company owned and operated the rotary drilling equipment and owned the Class B stock of the A&K Petroleum Company. The next few years were ones of steady progress as the company began to emphasize the exploration for and acquisition of oil and gas reserves. In 1938, the company drilled the Discovery well in the large Magnolia field in Columbia County, Arkansas. By 1942, Bob Kerr felt that he could devote a major share of his time to public service. The first native Oklahoman to be elected governor, Kerr served the people of his state with distinction from 1943 to 47, beginning a brilliant career of continuous public service. He served his nation and state with vigor and unswerving devotion as United States Senator from 1948 until his untimely death on January 1, 1963. Although public service took most of his time, he maintained his ties with the company and remained interested in its activities and growth. He created and left all of us at Kerr-McGee a cherished heritage. In April of 1942, Kerr-Lynn and Company was merged into the corporation Kerr-Oil Company. In that same year, R.H. Lynn retired from the company to become an independent oil operator, and I became executive vice president and operating head of the company. During the war years, Kerr-Lynn Oil played a key role in the development of the West Edmonds field northwest of Oklahoma City. The company drilled a discovery well in that field for an independent oil operator named Ace Katoski, whom I think some in this room may remember, for a small amount of cash plus working interest in a number of Katoski's leases. The discovery well was completed in April 1943 and set off the West Edmonds field boom. As development began, there was a shortage of drilling equipment and manpower. Outdated drilling equipment was resurrected, and steam rigs, which had last been used in the Oklahoma City and East Texas boom, were renovated and placed in service. By 1945, the company had managed to assemble 22 rigs and to find and train the manpower to operate them. This activity in the West Edmonds field, plus the acquisition in that area of a large block of acreage, some of which required immediate development, led to a significant milestone in the history of the company. While the company had been able to borrow from Oklahoma banks the funds needed for day-to-day operations, the financing now required exceeded the capability of these banks. Hugo Anderson, vice president of the First National Bank of Chicago, was approached because of his knowledge of the oil business and his experience in financing growing and struggling as ours. The bank made the company a term loan of $1 million. This marked the beginning of a banking association that continues today and which has contributed much to the growth of this company. At about the same time, the company entered into a joint exploration arrangement with the Petroleum Company. For a number of years, this arrangement permitted Kermit to greatly expand its search for oil and gas. Leases acquired under this program increased production and generated additional cash flow, which made possible an expanded exploration program. In 1945, the company took the initial steps toward becoming a fully integrated oil company. A small 1,200 barrel per day refinery located in Wynnewood, Oklahoma, was purchased from the estate of the late Joyce Carter. Over the years, the plant has been completely rebuilt, and today is a modern 28,000 barrel per day refinery. A few service stations were built during the next decade, but it was not until 1955 when the marketing pipeline and refining facilities of Deep Rock Oil Corporation were purchased that the company was represented in all phases of the oil business. On January the 15th, 1946, the name of Kermit Oil Company was changed to Kerr-McGee Oil Industries, Inc. In the following 6 years, Kerr-McGee entered into new activities that are among the greatest strengths of our operations today. These new fields of endeavor were exploration of the continental shelf offshore Louisiana, the acquisition of leases and subsequent discovery of oil and gas there, development of methods and equipment for drilling in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and entry into the uranium business. The company began geophysical exploration in the nearshore waters of Mississippi and Louisiana in 1945. By 1946, sufficient seismic evidence of a salt dome prospect was found to request Louisiana to offer leases for sale. The company purchased 8 5,000-acre blocks in the Ship Shoal area in September of that year. On September the 9th, 1947, drilling operations were begun off Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. The water depth was 18 feet, and the well was 12 miles offshore. The well drilled to 2,563 feet was completed as a 40 barrel per hour oil discovery. Kerr-McGee had made history by bringing in the first commercial oil well out of sight of land in the Gulf of Mexico. It was one of many firsts for the company. This one was indeed important to the petroleum industry because it marked the beginning of exploration of the continental shelf, which now is on a worldwide basis. To drill this discovery well, the company devised new drilling concepts and equipment. It is with a great deal of pride that we note our contributions to the technology of drilling for oil and gas in the ocean. The company pioneered 2 of the 3 basic methods now used for drilling in offshore open water. Today, Kerr-McGee's international offshore drilling operations are conducted by 2 wholly owned subsidiaries, Transworld Drilling Company and Transworld Drilling Company Limited. Transworld presently has 17 offshore drilling devices, including its newest and most sophisticated Transworld Rig 61, which is now drilling offshore South Africa, and Rig 60, which is expected to be completed in Japan next month. Early in the 1950s, management decided that the company's resources invested in drilling equipment, in land drilling equipment, could be utilized more profitably in the ocean and on land. And during the next several years, most of the company's land drilling equipment was phased out. Competent and experienced personnel from land operations began the nucleus of an international ocean-going drilling organization. offshore drilling. The company began several years ago to apply its capabilities to the drilling of large diameter holes. Holes with diameters as large as 10 feet were drilled. Last spring, Kerr-McGee completed drilling a uranium mine shaft hole 16.5 feet in diameter, the largest diameter vertical mine shaft ever successfully drilled to completion by rotary drilling techniques on the North American continent. In the early 1950s, the company began to plan on becoming a total energy company and initiated exploration and acquisition programs toward achieving this objective. It was reason and the spiraling demand has confirmed that the energy needs of our society would continue to rise sharply, and that all four primary fuels, oil, gas, coal, and uranium, would share in the energy market. A step toward this goal of total energy production was achieved in 1952 when the company acquired the mining properties of a small uranium company. This purchase was immediately followed by initiating a uranium exploration program. The company's first uranium mill, a 300-ton of ore per day processing plant, was completed in the fall of 1954 when Kerr-McGee became the first oil company to add uranium mining and drilling to its activities. The early recognition of the potential of nuclear energy gave Kerr-McGee lead time to develop the geologic concepts and exploration know-how, which have resulted in the discovery and ownership of very substantial reserves of uranium. The company's first large uranium deposit was found in 1955 in the Ambrosia Lake area near Granite, New Mexico. The following year, Kerr-McGee, along with two other companies, formed the Kerr-McGee Corporation, which the company now owns entirely. The uranium ore processing plant, which was built following the formation of this company, is the nation's largest, and since starting up, has produced more than 53 million pounds of uranium, and I might add that uranium averages about $8 a pound, which is something over $400 million worth of uranium has been produced. But in addition to the company's exploration and development of offshore leases in the Gulf of Mexico and its entry into the uranium business, Kerr-McGee also was expanding in other areas in the early 1950s. Several natural gas steam plants were built or purchased. A joint venture potash mining and milling facility was constructed in the Carlsbad Basin of southeast New Mexico. And in 1957, the Cato Oil and Grease Company of Oklahoma City was acquired. And in 1957, Triangle Refineries Incorporated, the largest wholesale marketer of refined products in the United States, was acquired. This company was founded in St. Louis in 1937. In the late 1950s, the company began to explore for high-quality coal in eastern Oklahoma and to acquire leases in two major areas on the northern flank of the McAllister, Oklahoma coal basin. Underground development of a mine to produce metallurgical grade coal in this area was begun in 1969. Coal reserves also have been acquired in the Illinois coal basin and in several of the western states. In the early 1960s, when the future of the uranium business beyond the United States Atomic Energy Purchase Program was indefinite, Kerr-McGee diverted its uranium exploration staff to the search for other metals. This exploration program led to the discovery of commercial deposits of other raw materials needed in our society. By this time, management viewed Kerr-McGee as a natural resource company with the objectives of finding and acquiring competitive reserves of raw materials, mining or otherwise processing them efficiently, and processing them into quality products that could be sold at profitable prices. Expanding its gas processing operations. The company in December of 1961 placed on stream at Navajo, Arizona, the nation's first privately owned helium processing plant, selling only to the commercial market. On January 1, 1963, a heart attack ended the life of the United States Senator Kerr, the company's co-founder. He had become chairman of the board at Kerr-McGee in 1954, and as he began his second term in the Senate, he had become chairman as he began his second term in the Senate. And at that time, I became president and chief executive officer. Upon his death, I was elected chairman and continued as chief executive officer. F.C. Love was elected to the presidency in 1967. Returning to the chronological evolution of the company, Kerr-McGee also diversified into the field of preserved wood products with the purchase of two leading firms of the forest products, the T.J. Moss Tie Company and the American Creosote Company. These two firms are now merged into a single subsidiary, Moss American Corporation. From 1963 to 65, Kerr-McGee acquired several fertilizer marketing companies, and in 1965 consolidated them into the Kerr-McGee Chemical Corporation. By this time, Kerr-McGee had expanded into natural resources and was more than a fully integrated oil company. In 1965, the name was changed from Kerr-McGee Oil Industries, Inc. to Kerr-McGee Corporation. In late 1967, the largest single merger in the history of Kerr-McGee took place with the acquisition of American Potash and Chemical Corporation, a company active in the production of basic chemicals. The skills of American Potash in converting brines and ores to chemicals and metals, coupled with a long experience in the marketing of these products, indicated that it would fit beneficially with Kerr-McGee's exploration and development capabilities. The 13,000 acres of leased and fee land in the Searles Lake, in the desert of California, was one of Kerr-McGee's principal entities in this merger. The American Potash properties include the second largest reserve of sodium borate salts in this country, as well as large tonnages of sodium carbonate, sulfates, and potash. Last month, American Potash was consolidated into another existing wholly owned subsidiary, Kerr-McGee Chemical Corporation, the operations of which now encompass the parent company's activities in chemicals, fertilizers, and non-fuel minerals. While the principal source of Kerr-McGee's income continues to be oil and gas, the company's forward thrust into nuclear fuel has been rapid during the past few years. Kerr-McGee is now the largest producer of uranium oxide in the United States. In 1964, the company constructed north of Oklahoma City a facility for converting enriched uranium into pellets, which in turn are fabricated into fuel assemblages for nuclear power reactors. Late last year at the same location, the plant for manufacturing plutonium fuel for experimental fast breeder and commercial thermal power reactors was completed. And in April of this year, Kerr-McGee dedicated its uranium hexafluoride conversion plant located in Sequoia County in the eastern part of Oklahoma. It is the nation's second commercial uranium hexafluoride facility designed to convert uranium oxide from both domestic and foreign mills into uranium hexafluoride. With the completion of these three new plants in Oklahoma, Kerr-McGee has become a participant in 6 of the 8 segments of the nuclear fuel cycle. These 6 steps are exploration for uranium, mining of ore, melting of ore to recover uranium, conversion of uranium oxide into uranium hexafluoride at the Sequoia facility, pelletizing of enriched uranium oxide and plutonium uranium mixed oxide at the Cimarron facility north of Oklahoma City, and fabrication of fuel oil also at the latter facility. Kermit is now engaged in more segments of the nuclear fuel cycle than any other company in the country. And with the establishment of our nuclear facilities in Oklahoma, this state has become the first in the nation to possess 3 major nuclear fuel facilities in its orbit. We at Kerr-McGee are proud of our deep involvement in nuclear energy and hope that Oklahoma is equally proud of the leadership role it now possesses in this highly promising industry of the future. This then is the story of Kerr-McGee's evolution from a small enterprise with 2 steam rigs in 1929 to a total energy company, and then into the even more broadly based natural resource company of today. And in this span of 41 years, the company's assets have grown from $50,000 to more than $722 million. It also is a story of people. As Kermit has explored for and developed natural resources, so too has it attracted and developed its human resources. Innovative, imaginative, and dedicated people. While the company's roots have always been deep in Oklahoma, Kermit is extending them even deeper with the construction of new corporate offices in downtown Oklahoma City. The 30-story tower and attendant structures will be combined with currently occupied office facilities to form the Kermit Center, occupying a city block. Hopefully, our past is but prologue to the future. Kermit looks forward to an increasingly important role in satisfying man's insatiable need for energy. Thank you very much.
Mr. McGee, thank you for playing such an important role in helping make this one of the most successful annual conferences the State Chamber of Commerce has ever had. The Kerr-McGee story was particularly interesting to all of us because this company plays a major role. Its link in the industrial complex of this state and nation is certainly important to every one of us. We do appreciate your coming and presenting this to us. In the development of this conference, we promised you that you would be privileged to hear from many prominent speakers that would provide you with stimulating ideas, thought-provoking comments, and new information on subjects designed to better equip you to meet the challenges of the decade. And I really believe that we have fulfilled that commitment to you. Again, I want to say to the leadership of this State Chamber of Commerce, I'm talking about the officers and the directors, I want to thank them for their tremendous support that I have received this past year. All that has been accomplished, certainly, is no credit particularly to me, but to the fine leadership, the energy that has been exerted by men, the stature that you've been privileged to see today. I particularly want to thank Doris Blair. As all of us know,